All right, guys, this is Jeff, the Big Hairy Dog, and we're looking at physical inventory for Prism. I'm on a pretty current version. Of course, they just when you upgrade your version, they bump out a new version for you. But this one's pretty fresh, 2.5.4 13.27. There is a 13.30 now, but this is pretty current as far as goes. And with the current version, of course, they did add one thing, which I'll show you. They added the cost to the discrepancy report, and I just started playing with that. And I just put the cost field in. I think we could do the math to get the extended cost of the discrepancies, but I didn't have time to get that together. So I just put it in so we could see that it does exist. Okay. So physical inventory. The first thing I would want to start with is that there are basically 4 steps to this process. If we were to stand back and look at the forest, not the trees, there is start, there is count, there is look at your differences or discrepancies, and there's accept those, update it. That's the process in a nutshell. So when we started, you often hear people say it freezes the inventory. It doesn't freeze the inventory. It creates a count sheet, and in the count sheet, the inventory is frozen. Yes, correct. It does not freeze the real inventory. The real inventory is on hand, and on hand is alive. But there are some limitations on that. You have to be in a controlled count environment, right? So we'll come back to that. Then we count our stuff. So this freezes the book value. This essentially freezes the physical value. We compare the two and we see what differences there are, and we fix them. If there's a problem, we fix them. We then, after we've fixed everything we can fix, we accept the results, right? We update it. That creates adjustment memos. So if we were to translate that to the screens, here I am at the main menu, just logged in. And so I'm going to go to store operations, merchandise, physical inventory. Now, I don't have any active ones. I killed all the ones before the webinar here. So I am going to say I want to start a new one. And I could pick which store I want to do it on. And then I got to give it a name. So we'll say PI, June 2021, 6, one of those years. And could make some notes. I can create with a filter. I mean, if I want to limit it to just one department and filter that, I would go to the filter and put my filter in, and that would only start the items that are in that department. Therefore, you couldn't accidentally update other items in another department because they're not in the count sheet, right? That's more of like a cycle inventory configuration. And cycle inventory as well, excellent, highly recommend them. They require more work than a regular physical because you have to plan it and you have to know where everything is because you're only counting part of your inventory. We're just going to go with the regular create here. Hopefully this won't take a month. All right, excellent. So now we have the physical started. So here it is, right here on the top, right? That's the physical. And we're standing on the top of the hill looking down on the physicals, right, that we've maybe done in the past. At the bottom, we have the sheet. So let's go into the PI sheet. So here's the PI sheet itself. So this is everything, right, that we've done. So, and when we hit that start button, it goes out and finds the on hand, right? Here's the on hand, and it copies it into the start quantity column. And of course, we haven't counted anything. We just hit the start button. So everything is short. That's a perfect start, right? Now, if the on hand is negative, it would have put the negative in there, and the discrepancy would be positive. Of course, I don't see any of those, but you can't actually have a negative on hand. So that's going to reset to 0 if, in fact, you don't have any. Now, I am using zones. I highly recommend using zones. I've had a few clients that could pull off not using zones, but we're talking about, like, I had one client that really great ladies, but they had 80 items in their inventory. Okay, they used simple mode, and they just exported out a spreadsheet. They went around the room, counted them, and then they sorted them in simple mode, keyed the count in. That was it. But I mean, anybody who's got a store that's got even a little bit of space, you're going to need zones. So typically, what we would do is um, we would want to like sit down and like draw a map, basically. Now, it doesn't have to be like uh, to scale. Like you don't have to be worried about 1/8 inch equals 1 foot or something, right? You just would basically want to say, okay, like here's my basic store, right? And and there's my front door, right? Maybe I have a front counter like that, right? And then I have, I have a section here I want to count, and then I have another section there and there, and then I have a section here I want to count, and then I have a section right here I want to count down the wall, right? You want to plan the count, right? And so then you want to decide where you want to make your counts, and then I'd have 2 rows of fixtures here in the middle, and I'm going to tag each of those with a zone number so that I know, so I can keep track of this process, right? So and then you would go on and say, look, okay, I'm going to divide this up like this, and this is going to be 1, and this is going to be 2, and this is going to be 3, 4, and 5, so on, right? So you would go around and map out how you're going to count this so that you can see what you've accomplished, keep track of it. And of course, in this store, we might have a little stock room back here, right? And so then we would have to decide how that's going to be, whether that's going to be counted together or in little pieces, and then maybe another stock room back out here, which in real life we did have this. So there was another door right here, and we had like a shed out back that we had to count, and it went pretty fast. We counted this whole store in a day and 3 hours or something. It was intense. We had 3 scanners, but it's really important that you have like these zones figured out. You know how the plan of attack is going to be, that you have them listed out, and you know where they are and what's going on with them, and you can kind of check them off as you get them done. And then at the end of the day, you can say, "Look, hey, we did we ever get that zone done?" You got to keep track of this process. You got to know that you got everything. I know I'm up on the soapbox again. So right. So step 1 is accomplished. We hit the start button. It started it. So step 2 would be we need to go count these things, right? So on the bottom of the screen it says zones. So we go down and we click on zones and we say, hey, we're going to make a new zone, and we call this whatever we want. Now we have quite a few characters. We have 20 characters here to define the zone, right? So you know, I probably would do like floor, -1 or something, or like, and then stockroom -1, and then shed -1, or something simple that lets me know like where I'm going in a nutshell, right? So I'm just going to say floor 1 and click OK. Now, notes are helpful. If we know at the time where we're doing this, we could say who's scanning it, but I don't know that we're going to know that in this new configuration. We're putting these zones in ahead of time. So when we hit the start button, and I have people then going out with little scanners, hopefully to count, whoever's running the inventory would immediately sit here and just start jamming these things in. If we have the plan, we should be typing these in so that they're ready to upload as soon as we get the data, right? So I would just start hammering these things out and get them all typed in there, get the plan in place, right? Anyway, so then if we get a scanner, we would then go to the zone that represents that. Now, if you don't have a scanner, there are other ways we could do this, and we could talk about those in a minute. If you the best scanner for Prism probably today would be a TC21 Zebra scanner. Um, Any good pictures of it? Well, there's lots of good pictures here, but we're talking about this kind of thing right here, right? That's a zebra, and it comes like that. You can buy the extra handle, and we did have the handle, and the handle is nice. Not gonna lie. This goes along with Foundry Logic software, and in Foundry Logic software, you can rename. So you could scan the zone, you can rename the zone, so that when they upload it in the upload menu, it would say floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, 4. We would actually be able to do apples to apples here. So anyway, I don't have a scanner hooked up. I don't have a scanner physically here. We're going to mimic the scanner thing. So I'm checking off my zone. I'm going to go into the zone sheet. I immediately see this is just a view of the PI sheet, right? So far scanned, there's nothing in here. I could go over here to the add counts. I could start adding counts here manually, or I could go to imported. And now if I had the TC21, I would go down to the start button, and there would be a button in this menu that would be added to allow me to upload or talk to the Foundry Logic software. In my case, I'm just going to go down here to the bottom and say import, and I'm going to take a map that I've already set up. Now this is delimited. It has 2 columns. It has the item SKU, and it has how many. That's all we need for this, right? It could be a UPC code. It could be an ALU, an internal. It could be an old item version 8 item number, but I didn't check that off because we don't have any. So I'm going to say, yeah, use this map, continue, and then I have to choose the file. So I think I have a file set up that I can use for this. Yeah, here's a zone import. And now a TC21 is a really smart scanner, meaning that in the Foundry Logic software, it synchronizes with the Oracle database and grabs all the items, and then in turn passes those down to the scanner. So at the moment of scanning, if you scan a bad item on a TC21, it's going to say this item is not in the database. Do you want to force it in? And you better say no. Pick the item up and see if there's another barcode. If not, set it aside to be retagged, right? Put it in the trouble area. Now, if you have a dumb scanner, a scanner that just collects barcodes and associates quantities with it, and there are lots of those out there. There are apps you can get for your phone. So, and you import that. And I do have an app on my phone. So import complete, however, that contains bad scans, right at the bottom right corner there. So I have an app on my phone that I could use the camera to scan barcodes, and it associates quantities with it. And in the app, you can email that file to yourself, and then you could convert it into a CSV. We're pretty easy, and import it just like I just did. That's another option, right? So that means we have a bad scan over here. Right, so we got different kinds of item not recognized, item does not belong to this PI sheet. Interesting. That's an interesting. So this file I had out there was an old file from doing what I do for so many years. So it obviously doesn't exist in this data set currently. And this one here the lookup had too many matches that matched too many items. Right now, each one of these, we could fix it, and we could go find the item in the zone. So if you're going to go searching the zone better not be half the store, right? It better be like this 4-foot section of slat wall, because that's going to be tough enough to look through, right? So you could go find these items, and you could say, look, I want to fix this item. And then you could go out here and you could search by something, and you could find an item. And if you found what you were looking for, you could say it's that item there, and it would auto correct it. Or you could take these items, remove them completely out of the zone, put them in the trouble area to be retagged, and say, we'll just clear those things out, right? One or the other. You got to resolve bad scans. If you get bad scans, you got to resolve them, either by correcting them or physically removing the item and physically removing the scans. Then somebody else, as we continue to scan this, somebody else can be assigned to start retagging the bad items, right? And that's the last zone you scan, right? Okay, so now we have items that are in the imported sheet, but they need to be in the scan sheet. That's where they need to be, because they're in they're sort of in the lobby, but they haven't come in yet. They haven't come into the house. So we need to merge these over into the scan sheet. So at the bottom left corner, it says merge. So we click the merge button. It says they'll be merged. Do you want to continue? Yes, we do. So whether you do a manual count here and key them in or import them here, either one's going to require you to merge them over to the scanned section. And now at this point, the zone is created. It has items, real items, and we could, if we wanted to, print this out. And if we say, well, all right, so this is the good scans, right? And I'm just going to preview that because this is from the developer. This is their default good scans. It's not outstanding, but it's not terrible either, right? If it ever print here. So, it's got a UPC field. Not all of our items have a UPC. Easy to change that, by the way. It's got a description one and a scan quantity. Okay, well, not terrible, right? But not outstanding. I went in and toyed with it and tinkered with it, and so I've got a BHD good scan, which we could take a peek at real quick, right? If it'll let us get into this. So here you see I just added a few things, right? I mean, at this stage of the game, an item could exist on the sales floor and in the stockroom. So we're not going to be able to see scanned and discrepancies, right? Start, scanned, and discrepancies. This is just one small piece of the physical. Our only responsibility in a zone is to make sure we count that zone correctly, right? So if we print this out and we randomly audit a few of these items, it's just to ensure that the person who scanned this didn't totally blow it up, right? And I do recommend sampling the zones as you go, like printing these out and just double checking, especially if you see something and you say, wow, we got 300 of those? Really? We got 300 of those? I'm going to go double check that one because that doesn't seem right, right? So, yeah, you really do need to sample your data. There's a lot to do in a physical inventory. Some people can't scan to save their life. They lose their place too often and they screw it up. They could be retagging product. They could be refacing product after it's scanned. There's a ton of things to do in physical inventory land, right? So you don't have to be the guy on the scanner. And if it's not your thing, that's totally fine. So so if we went out and sampled that, we said, hey, that's pretty good actually. That worked out well. You would close that, and you'd say, okay, that one there, not only has it been counted, right? We got a count on that, but I double checked it, so I am going to actions, mark that one, and then I'm going to merge marked. So I'm going to merge that in. So this secondary merge that we just did is the real merge, shall we say. And so that puts these into the physical count. Up until this point, they're just in the zone, right? So we would then go, to the next zone, and they would bring us the stuff, and we would say, go into the zone sheet. We're going to go a little faster this time. I'm going to go to imported, say import, and we're going to grab our map and say continue, and we're going to grab our file, and we're going to open that file and import, and it's going to yell at us about our bad zones, and I'm going to bad items, and I'm just going to clear those. And yes, we probably would go back to imported now. You can't merge it until you got your bad scans corrected. So now we would go back and merge that. And hopefully, like I said, if you have a smart scanner like the Foundry Logic software with the TC21 or 22, is really excellent. That right at the point of scanning, it tells you that's a bad scan. And that's really where you want to know. You don't want to wait till you're uploading the data. So now I could, if I wanted to print this out, send somebody out to double check a few items or find out what's going on, right? I think we just saw that. So, and then I would close this, and I could be going. I could have. I mean, in real life, we had around 23 zones on the floor, and then another like 7 in the stockroom, and another, I don't know, 4 or 5 in the shed out back. So, we had roughly around 30 something zones at any given moment, and then you'd have to go find the right one and and make sure you uploaded that. And then when it's double checked and you feel good about it, then we would go merge that. So I'm going to mark that one, and we're going to merge mark. And so that's the process with the zones. We follow the plan. And obviously, I shouldn't really probably have to say it, but I'm going to mention it that if you have to be ready to do physical, like this isn't about prep, but prep is probably 85% of physical inventory, right? Now, I have other clients that don't have scanners, right? That have different alternate plans, right? So I'm going to back up for a second, and I'm going to back up a little further and go to merchandise inventory. So I have some clients that don't have a scanner and are going to scan the floor by filtering for sections. But the stock in the back room, if you've got like this style in a box, the wise thing to do would be to make sure the floor has got enough, then seal the box, well, count it, then seal the box, and then filter for a group of items that you've got in the box, right? Go to options and print tags. Now you're going to have the doc design, but I can get you the doc design, right? So I've got doc designs that'll let you print out what what's going on with that item, right? So right now there's a bug. I can't print the quantity yet, but I still got the quantity column in there. But you could put your count over here on the right. You know what I mean? And you could just write the counts in on this, put this on the side of the box. You got the barcodes now and the counts. So if the tape is still sealed and your initials aren't broken, then that's pre-counted, and you can just rip through that with the scanner. You follow? So if the stockroom was prepped correctly, and it wasn't when we did it, we had to count the stockroom too, or we would have been done in one day. So this kind of thing here can really be a game changer. So all the items need to be tagged. They won't be, by the way. You'll still find mistakes of missing tags. All the back areas should be prepped and pre-counted, right? And then using the same thing here, if I was going to do the floor and I did not have a scanner, then I might have to start going in and saying filter by department code, right? I might have to go into say DCS and say filter by department code and say search, and then here I can select all, and I could do that same print job, and it would print everything in that department. Another option too is the current version has this new export function right here, right? So I could export to CSV all records, 851, right? I'm just going to say current page. I don't really want to wait for it. Come on. So there's my little CSV. I just exported, right? So I could put this in Excel, and I could do my count in Excel too, right? So I could either print the count sheet and put them in, but that's going to I need to key those in to my count sheet. If I did this and I had a little laptop and I could open this in Excel and then create a count column, then I could at the end of this I could just drop this down to the two columns, the SKU. I need the ALU, and I need this column that has the ALU in it, right? And my count column, right? And then that I could import in just like I did, right? So those are just some offerings to keep your head spinning in the right direction, right? As to what's going on with physical inventory, or making a plan, shall we say. All right, so back into physical inventory. So yeah, I went to point of sale. So physical inventory, here's my physical. Just into the sheet, right? Into my zones. So I've got two zones merged. We'll do the third one, right? So we'll go to the zone sheet, go over here to imported, So we want to import that using our map. And I could, if I wanted to, I guess I could go cancel, import. I could say new right here, right? And if I said new, I have to give it a name, right? Um, and then I'll say V8 so that it has a difference, right? So I'll say continue, right? So then it says fixed length. I could do a fixed length. I don't like fixed length because UPCs are not the same length as my internal ALUs. So I would do delimited, and then it's got two columns, and I would say what the data looks like, and I'm going to add this one so that it actually we know that it has all the item numbers from V8 basically. Then we just click save. It creates it. So now I have two. See, and so I then select the one I want, and I then say continue, and then I choose the file and rock and roll, right? We've seen this part before. It needs to be a TXT. I don't know if you noticed that was a TXT file. When you do these, I don't think the import tool will see a CSV or certainly not an XLS or an XLSX, any of that stuff. It's got to be saved. A CSV is a text file, by the way. It's just comma separated value, and Excel recognizes that. But you want to save it to be a TXT, and then it'll let you come in just fine. Of course, we got those bad scans. Going to clear those, and then we're going to merge that over into the cancel. Merge that over into the scan section. So they're in the club, print it out, double check as much as we want, and then go back here to highlight it, say zone, no, next contestant, close, highlight it, click actions, mark, and merge marked. So if I went through zone by zone and collected all the data, right, then at that moment we could graduate to step 3, right? So in physical, yeah, create the zones, add the counts. We talked about a count sheet. If there are errors, locate them, resolve them, enter them, fix them, or clear them and put them in the trouble area and retag them. Clear the scanner. Now with the TC21, you would not have this. TC21 is smart. It labels the zones correctly and you delete them when you're done. It just turned out we screwed up and we needed to re-upload a few of the zones and we had them in the scanner, so we just resent them and then we're able to do that. Print the good scans, double check the zones, merge the zone, right? So now this bar, this line is not a random line. It is there and it has significance, and that is just that. Once we've frozen the book value in the start, and then subsequently we have frozen the counts, physical counts, and we've got them all, at that moment we can open for business. We can start selling stuff, right? So we really should be closed while we're counting. And there are different strategies for doing that, right? So I could come in early in the morning, slam the sales floor, get down to the last row, open for business. Somebody wants to buy something in that last row that I haven't scanned. I could just scan it right in their hand before they take it up to front, right? So let's look at why that's true. How can we get our count done for the floor and open and have it not mess up the count, right? Well, down here you can see when we hit the start button, it should look like that. So the on hand that's really there gets copied over to here, right? And it exists. Immediately the scan count is 0. So we go to, hey, we're short everything, right? So we go out and we count 8. Okay, that means our discrepancy is now 2. Now, when we hit the update button at the end of this whole process, it's going to do this. The new quantity in inventory is going to equal the current quantity. Okay, that's 10 plus the difference, -2. Okay, so -2 and 10 is in fact 8, right? All right, good. Hey, what if we took a day looking at our discrepancies and we sold 5 of those so that the on hand was now 5? Does the math still work? Certainly 5 and -2 is not 8. But if we had 8 and sold 5, we would have 3, right? And 5 and -2 is 3. So it works. As soon as we get both counts in the can, like we hit the start button, get our count sheet frozen, we then go count our stuff, get our counts in there. At that moment, we can start making sales. Now, if somebody buys something before we scan it, that's the issue. So you have to get enough of the floor scanned that you can control the rest of the scan, right? So down here we see an example where we sell one. In my scenario, we have 8, but I was only able to count 7 because somebody bought one before I could count them. That results in a -3 instead of a -2. But the on hand, when we make the sale, the on hand is alive, man. Yeah, the count sheet's frozen, but the on hand is not frozen, right? So immediately the on hand goes down. Now a 9 and a -3 is not 7, right? So we have to count that one that got sold. I mean, and there are different scenarios we could do. Like for instance, we could hit the start button on Monday. We could count the stockroom down, and then Tuesday morning, we could go to count the sales floor. We could run a report for everything we sold off the sales floor on Monday, and then import that like I did as a count, right? I mean, there's all kinds of cool options, right? The point is to have a plan and to minimize your exposure to this scenario here where somebody's buying it. We don't know what got purchased prior to the count versus post count, right? That's where we get in trouble. What we used to do when I was in retail, which was a few years ago now, we would close early. We'd close at 6 and lock the doors. Now we couldn't hit the start button. We couldn't. We don't actually physically have a count sheet because we can't do step 1 until we throw the deadbolt on the front door, and we know that at that moment the inventory is now frozen, physically frozen, right? So, but we could take those scanners. We could scan the heck out of the stockroom. So you got to know that the stockroom had been fully scanned and they were sitting in the scanners ready to upload that data. So at 6 o'clock, when we throw the bolt, man, we hit the start button on the PI and boom, we start firing in those stockroom zones. And that whole stockroom is counted by like a quarter after 6, right? While everybody's starting to scan the sales floor, right? And sometimes we get done with the stockroom at like 4, and we would start dragging fixtures off the floor into the stockroom and counting those too. So whatever the plan, you got to have one. All right, so once we have all of our zones counted and accounted for, our map has been satisfied. We know exactly what was out there and that everything has been handled. Then at that moment, we can close our zones. And here we have a discrepancy. And we could, here on the discrepancy report, we could print this. And I was toying with our discrepancy report a little earlier. Because like I said, it was really awkward. Before this version, they did not have the cost in here. Now, I was able to, in the 10 minutes before this meeting, I was able to go and add the cost here, right? So we have a cost column now. Now, I down the road, I would like to, and I tried it, but it just didn't work. And there's some programming you can do in the doc designer, right? So here you can see that this thing is open, and here's okay. Let's get. If I double click this here, you can see I put a format command on it to make it look. Otherwise, if I didn't put a format command on it, what would happen is that, like the 110, you would not see the decimals right in that 110. It would have dropped these. So this would be 6.5. This would be just 0. So to see it expressed with 2 decimals all the time, you have to put a format command on there. In addition to that, you can do math. You can actually tell it to multiply by different one field against the other, right? I thought I had an example of that. Yeah, here's an example of a point of sale one where we have the format price, and then we have a price here being multiplied by the quantity, right? So I was toying with that, but I couldn't quite get it to fly, and I did not want to not have something ready to go for the webinar. So I just put the cost in. But we can at least see, like if we're short 300 and we know it's 35 bucks, I mean, I don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that's more important than being short one, at 650, for instance. You know what I mean? So just having the cost on the screen is huge. Now this here, we could print this out. We could go around the store and we could decide what we want to fix, right? Now, I also, because this has been going on a long time, I created some reports, and yeah, let's get rid of our weird filter criteria. It's probably going to yell at me. I'm going to log out. It's been like since yesterday since I've logged out of Crunch. And usually, if you go overnight, it's going to get weird on you, right? So we go back down to PI. So prior to this version that has the cost, we did not have access to the cost in the discrepancy report. So I wrote this here to be able to then see our discrepancies, right? And let's see if I go to my filter here and I say in the difference column, I'd like to say not 0. I don't know if you guys have played with Crunch much, but this is Crunch, of course. And so now you see I've isolated all the real discrepancies. And of course, in Crunch, we have a lot more control over what we're doing here, right? So can I get it to scroll right? There we go. So you can see I've got the cost difference or the extended cost out there, right? So clearly, if this here is unit cost of 35 times 2 we're short on, then it's 70 something, right? As far as the actual discrepancy. So that last column is the actual loss, right? With cost and price. So so this is something that's up on our network, and any tech could load for you if you don't have this. It's got a nice little grouping on our network, and we could just drop the KRR file in and then import it in the back end of Crunch, and then you'd have this group. Now the other thing I did is I did this here. Now we use the same file over and over again as our test import, right? So clearly those items were scanned in more than one zone, right? So real life example is that we had a jacket on a rounder in like Fairbanks, Alaska. And one of my techs was on site, and they were helping them take physical inventory. And they called me and said, hey, there's 3 of these jackets on the rounder. We run the difference report. The difference report says that we counted 63 of these. We look at the zone. There's 3 in the zone. We looked at the physically the jackets themselves. There's 3. That's all we got. And we look at the discrepancy report. It says we counted 60 more somewhere. Where did we make the mistake, right? So it turns out they made the mistake in the jewelry counter, oddly. But if we run this report here, what this does is it takes and shows every item, and then it shows the zone name it was counted in, right? So if I group this here, I don't know why it's not already grouped this way, but if we group this by ALU, right? And we say, okay, it's going to say, okay, this item here, see, was scanned in these 3 zones, right? And it shows how many was scanned in each. So in here then, if I'm looking for a particular item and I'm like, damn, this item is really a mess, what's going on with this thing? And I know it's like ALU 339, right? So picking one, because we could just go at the top here and go 339 and find the item and it would tell us what happened to that item. And we'd be able to go back and look at those zones and see if we had a problem, right? So now, if we in fact overcounted this in zone 2 here, right, and we wanted to take that back, and maybe we wanted to give that to a different item, right? Maybe, what we would do back here. So with the discrepancy report, we print it out, we go out to the field, we find what we find, right? Then we come back, we have some corrections we want to make. Now, certainly we could go into zones. Yes, we could go check a zone off. Could we then mark that and unmerge it? Yes, we could. But I mean, an item could be counted in 2 or more zones, right? So what I find the easier thing to do to make corrections is to make a new zone, or maybe more than one new zone. So if Jeff, myself, was going out there to fix stuff, and I had little Susie and little Jimmy and whatever else out there, I would then probably make a correcting zone for each of them, right? And then I would go in, and they would give me a list. Okay, this one here was overcounted. There was 12 on the peg hook, but the last 4 was in fact not the same item, and they should have scanned all 12, but they didn't. Right? Okay, so then I would grab that item, and I would say, okay, zone sheet, and I would be able to go into the add counts area, right? And I could say 000339, right? Tab. I can get down to the field here. It's minus 100, right? Add count. So I can take back here from here, right? And I could do the same thing. I don't even know if the other ones are going to work. Well, let's try it. Let's go 000340 tab 100. Oh, it's got to be 2 tabs. Okay, so I'm going to add those 100 that I took off to another item, right? So I could just sit here and take back and add items willy-nilly all the way through, put all my corrections in, then close that, and then just say, okay, and now probably I would have printed it, and I probably would have done a 10 key on the sheet that they handed me, and I would then look at the total on the printout, and I would do a little double checking that I didn't make any errors, right, myself, right? So cancel, I don't need to print that, but then I would just go and merge that, and when I mark it and merge it, it would then go and make all my corrections for me, if that makes sense. Okay, 000339. Interesting. So did I not? I merged that, didn't I? Yeah. So, because I should be showing all of those, right? Yeah, it's all merged. Anyway, you get where we're going. If I go back now, let's see, let's out of curiosity, let's go close this and go up a level and go to scanned, and let's go search by ALU, and let's see here 000339. It's still interesting. I don't know. Maybe it did not. I did not do that last. Oh, I know I did wrong. Wait a second. I know what I did. I don't know if John, if you're watching it, if you saw what I did wrong, but I just realized what I did wrong. So if we go back to our sheet, and it should have stopped me, honestly. So zones, here's my correcting zone. So I'm going to actions, and I'm going to unmerge that one. And I'm going to go into the zone sometime in our lifetime. And of course, I think I've made this mistake once or twice. It's super easy to make. Inside the zone, the first thing we have to do, or should do, is merge it into the scanned area, right? I'm guessing I did not do that because it did not update correctly, right? So, come on. Right, so now if I go inside this thing, I just did a Control-Shift-R, by the way. Control-Shift-R resets the browser, makes it refresh. So I'm going to click on that, go into the zone sheet, and I want to know immediately, is there anything in scanned? And there is not. So if I go over to add counts, there's my stuff, right? So I did not do this merge piece. So you need to merge it. It has to still get scanned. And yeah, and I did that mistake on purpose. So everybody was watching this recording would understand how important it is to do that merge, right? So actions, mark, merge marked. And now if I go back to Crunch here and say, run that and do my 000339, I now see all 4 zones as I should, right? And if I wanted to know the total count there, I could have said, hey, look, why? Oh, yeah, we are. Never mind. We are summing. But if we group this like on the ALU, everybody should be able to see the 200 here at the bottom. But if I do that, it'll put a 200 right there, right? Which is a little bit more convenient. But yeah, we had 300. I took away 100, so there's 200, right? I mean, not rocket science. And if we go out of here now and we go back to scanned, and I say search by ALU, well, I really should be in discrepancy or in the regular sheet, right? And I say, so odd, but all right. Why can't we search by anything here? But we already know it's been fixed. I move around too quick sometimes, and sometimes it gets messy. But anyway, again, so the process, we hit the start button, we started, we got a count sheet. We went out using our map and we counted every zone on the floor. We know we counted everything in the store, right? It's a good idea to have somebody walk your map, by the way. Inevitably, if you're in the store every day, you'll forget something. I forgot something when I drew the map when I was on site. I forgot right by the front entry where there was some like photos, framed pictures that were actual inventory that were. I just didn't put a zone there because I didn't even. So it's a good idea to have somebody else like double check your map and try and interpret it because they're going to find mistakes. Anyway, we did our discrepancies. We uploaded our fixes that we wanted to get fixed for those, right? So the last step in physical inventory would be to do the update, right? So once we've made all of our corrections, we would close our inventory. So at the bird's eye view, we would select our inventory. At the bottom, it says update PI sheet. And we would then select our reason code, typically physical or PI or something, right? And then we always want to make sure it's all items, right? So it should default to all items. There's no reason to change it. So this should not be a huge issue. But if we started with 2 and we didn't count it, it doesn't have a quantity. And we need it to go to 0. If we didn't count it, it's because we don't have it. So if we only do quantities only, right? That one didn't get a quantity, then it lets the shrinkage pass through to the next physical, right? So we definitely need it to be on all items, right? And then put any notes you want in there, hit the update button. I mean, that's pretty easy. The update here in this version is so simple, right? Now, when we do the update, it immediately, and double check, you can't undo this one yet. They're working on being able to unarchive it and undo the update, but they have not got there yet today, right? So once you're here, you're kind of done in this version. But if we now go take a look at merchandise adjustment memo lookups, we should see here that the last memo or memos, in this case memo, was sourced by physical inventory, right? And the reason code is physical, right? So we could now take that and we could open that up and we could see, since this is only one document, now there's quite a few items on it, but there's still only one document. So we can see the cost difference here, right? Somehow we counted a lot of those things. Usually you'd get a shrinkage. I got a massive overage. So just willy-nilly uploading that stuff in hundreds and 300s, right? Maybe that was a little excessive. But yeah, we can run reports on this data. We can analyze what departments got. We can do a lot in reporting should we need to, right? All right, so that's your PI process in a nutshell. Um, I don't know if John, if you have any questions, since you're the only one who joined today, I'll open it up. If not, we may just wrap up and call it a day. All groups, let's see here if I do. Right, so this is a report I often install for a lot of my clients, and it's meant to be more like, and it's not getting anything nice, special. No good deed goes unpunished, right? Um, huh. Well, normally we see a reason code in all the documents under the reason code, and then a subtotal. Pretty simple report. I'm not sure why it's messing with us here, right? But this is a report I've definitely done before and could easily do again. And I'm curious, and since we're a little bit ahead of schedule here, I think I'm going to throw this in here. And of course, this is SQL Developer. This is the Microsoft version. There's other ones we use, but in any of these, if you're talking about Crunch, there's Crunch specific filtering or application specific filtering that this kind of application would not understand, right? Uh, yeah, it's working fine here. So the browser needs to be reset, or Crunch is very confused, right? So you can see here, this found our physical inventory reason, and it found the total piece and dollar difference, right? That was created, right, by that adjustment. Um, so yeah, I think I've been resetting the browser too often, and I've confused Crunch, which is not actually very uncommon. It's really, in fact, common to confuse the browser every time we do a Control Shift Delete and clear the cache because the browser's confused. It blows up our logins. It blows up a lot, and then Control Shift R to reset to force it to read a fresh environment from the Apache. So anytime you have an error in any of these applications, uh, before you call tech support, I would strongly recommend resetting the browser and seeing if it's no, this thing's still broken. So Crunch is just having a moment, right? So out of curiosity now, new. Right. So there you go. So building a new one now, right, is what I'm doing, and this is the memo date filter, right, and this is the store and company, and this needs to be a date, and then this field here lets you decide what things are. So the memo field here, the memo number should not be an integer. It should be a text. It's descriptive. We're not going to add up the document numbers, right? So that should be a text. It should be left justified, not right justified here like it is in the background, right? And then in our gear here, we would want to group by store typically, and then by reason code. Unless you have multiples, you're not going to need to group by store. But sum, you want to sum. The only two things there are to sum, right? Right. Yeah, that's normally what I do right there. And then give this a name. You know, quantity by store. So what I've intentionally left out here, right, is the items. Accounting generally doesn't need to see the items, and at the end of any given period, they need to know how we modified, certainly after a physical inventory, how we modified the inventory from doing physical inventory, right? So if I say, give me this thing for, what is it today, 11th, right? Yeah. So for today, should be a pretty short report. Oh, interesting. So that physical, there were other physicals in the past that I've done that were being added in that build mode. It just grabs a sample of data, a large sample of data, and then when I limit it to just today, it has the same number as the adjustment memo, which I kind of would have expected. So, and of course, we could go and build this version. This report was at the item level, and in fact, if we were to go to just the word quantity, right? If we say quantity changes, right? This one here, we run that for today. This is the default one from the developer, right? This is the one that I started with to build the other one. So this one here, and now it's missing cost, which is wrong, by the way, but it's not that hard to build this kind of report. Like we could go and do the math and add the cost to this one here, and we could drop the old and the adjusted. I don't need the start. This is the start, this old, and then the adjusted, and then the difference. I just really need the difference, right? And I do need the cost. I do need to know how many items, what the value of the items we just adjusted in or out are. So certainly we could get that. That's not a problem in crunch reporting. So all right. I guess at this point, John, I'm going to say we don't have any other questions. And we've gone through the whole sort of process. I'm going to say thank you very much for joining, and I appreciate it. And again, this is Jeff at the Big Hairy Dog. And if you need any of those reports or any of those screen doc designs, reach out to one of my techs. We can get them to you. It's not a problem. All right. You guys have a good weekend, and I will talk to you on the next one.